So, Mr. Black, did King follow the rules at any time?
Follow what rules?
That,
He followed the rules that he had learned. Now you've got to go in and find out where did he learn those rules from. I would suggest to you that he learned them from Francis Bacon and Thomas Aquinas or whatever you want to call them. All of you have studied these particular philosophers, right?
come on, man. There you go.
What? No, I'm serious. Because everybody's always talking to me about how much they know about Martin Luther King, but they've never bothered to go in and study what he studied. So how do you know anything about him? I was watching the NBA the other night when they had the special game, and it was Martin Luther King Day, and they were on the TV, and one of them said to the other one, he was born in what year, Daniel? What year was Martin Luther King born? Zaire, what year was he born? Kennedy, what year was he born?
1929.
Good. And what was his name at birth?
Michael King.
And one of the announcers on the program made that statement. And everyone else that was sitting up there with him said, I didn't know that. Mm-hmm. Why didn't they know that? Mm-hmm. They were all participating in the basketball games for Martin Luther King Day, but not one of them had any idea that he was born Michael King. Mm-hmm. Not one of them had any idea why his father changed his name from Michael to Martin Luther. Not one. And then I was saying to Ms. Bell, I remember I've gone over this in class, I think about 15 years ago. But the people didn't take it seriously because they're not really paying attention to what I'm talking about.
Great.
You know.
Before the thought that you were pursuing having to do with who Martin Luther King studied. How did you?
No, I didn't ask who he studied. What I suggested was on Martin Luther King Day, the NBA actually had on TV. One of the announcers said that he was born in 1929. Said he was born as what's his name?
Michael King Jr.
Michael King. And he stated why his father changed his name. What did his father change his name and Michael's name? What did his father change their names to? Martin what?
Luther.
Why did he change his name and his son's name to Martin Luther? You don't have a clue, do you?
I do.
Okay, well, then tell us. Then tell us what you're thinking.
Because it was of some names. It was, I can't remember, something Luther.
Okay, now, I don't want you to try to remember things. I want you to get over this. And the reason we keep doing this is because you keep trying to do everything the way you've always done it. It's no problem. You can keep doing it if you wish. But I'm telling you, that's going to get harder and harder and harder. The object of the exercise is for you to make things easier and easier and easier to accomplish. You follow me? Okay. So now, the father had just come back from Germany. And while he was in Germany, he had learned about Martin Luther. Tell me something about Martin Luther.
Before I do, let me ask you a question relative to this. His father wasn't born Martin either?
His father was born Michael.
Okay.
He changed both his name and his son's name to. So when he changed his name to Martin Luther, Martin Luther King, then his son, who had been Michael Jr., became Martin Luther King Jr. You follow me?
Yeah.
All right.
What age was he?
Well, he went to school. He went to school at 15. So I'm thinking he went to college at 15. So I'm thinking that the name change happened around 10 years old. Now, I don't want you to take my word for that. I need you to go in and research it. And what we're talking about now, what we're discussing now, is the way that you can research this. But in order to do it, you would have to look what person up?
Martin Luther.
You'd have to look up Martin Luther. Kennedy, have you looked up Martin Luther? Why not? Okay, one of you other Jesus brats. What is it?
Jesus.
Huh? What? Well, I'm sure everybody, if you were a Jesus brat, you all looked up Martin Luther, right?
Yeah.
You did?
Yeah.
Well, that's phenomenal that you did. But majority of us, I bet you we haven't looked up Martin Luther. Yes, I'm listening.
Martin Luther was a German professor.
Now, he's on his telephone, and it's going to come up all over the internet that someone has looked this up.
Yeah.
But go ahead. I'm not worried about it, James. I want you to do this right now.
Martin Luther was a German professor of theology.
A German professor? Go ahead.
Really?
Of theology, a composer, priest, monk, and a seminal figure in the Protestant Reformation. Luther came to
Stop.
replace
Stop. Let's do this before we go any further. We're going to go back and do this again. But before we go any further, let's do this right now. James, look at the word Protestant. Come to the board and write it.
So
Come to the board and write it.
We're not talking about upset Catholic.
That's what a Protestant is. An upset Catholic, yes. Now everybody understands that, right? Everybody understands you were 9 times out of 10. You don't have to erase anything. Just write Protestant right there. You understand that you grew up a Protestant, right? Most of you.
If you were a part of a church.
Well, most of everybody as a child were a part of a church. One single individual, and you may be different from everybody else.
I'm not saying I wasn't influenced by it. I just never went to church.
I understand, but the majority of the people sitting in this room were dragged from
Every
the time they
Sunday
were
morning
to church.
Right?
To church.
for 16 years, every Sunday morning.
Now, why is it that they don't know that they're Protestants?
And in the afternoon too. Christians don't leave.
I guess they have to know that they're upset, or they have to know that they're disenfranchised or something.
What a Protestant is.
Okay, but why is it that they don't know?
But they don't know that Catholics are Christians.
They don't know that Catholics are Christians. Is correct. What?
Some people know.
We don't know the history of the church.
They don't have a history. They don't have any idea about a history of the church.
Oh no.
So why is it that they think that they're Christians?
Because they told us we Christians.
So then what you're saying, what I think I'm hearing everyone say,
And
whether
the
you
word Christ. That also.
whether you understand is what you're saying or not, you've been programmed into thinking and believing something that is not real.
Yeah. I mean, even I would say, I made it a business to want to know, because it was affecting me too bad. And so what I found is most people that identify themselves as Christians in reality would probably lean more toward being Paulatans.
Or being what?
Paul.
Paulatans.
Paul.
Okay. You talking about Paul?
Absolutely.
Apostle
Well,
Paul.
see, here's what's weird. Who was a good Christian growing up?
What do you mean?
Just raise your hand. Anybody that was a good Christian growing up, raise your hand.
I mean,
Okay, good.
Something weird happened to me. When
I was a good
When I was
Christian.
baptized,
Yeah.
I started cursing more.
Okay, no problem. Only thing I'm getting ready to ask is, who was Paul? According to what you were taught, who was Paul?
One of the apostles.
You're saying one of the apostles. Okay, we got that out the way. Who was Paul?
Son of Noah.
Son of who?
Saul.
You say you're going to take this a little further than what in the answer that I would get from people who were dragged off to church. You didn't learn that from being dragged off to church.
Saul was, but I tell you what I did learn. Totally confused about Saul being on the road to Damascus.
That's right.
And he went blind. Now I learned that in Solomon chapter.
Write Saul up on the board. Write Saul up on the board.
But I couldn't figure out where Paul came from.
You just said Saul. Where did you get that from?
I learned.
I got that.
Where did you learn it?
You pointed it out.
Okay, good. Wait, and that's what I'm trying to get to. See, because I know for a fact that the average person never learned that this word was Saul.
I learned it was Saul.
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 I
So
didn't
let-
learn it was Saul.
So what now?
I didn't even learn it was Saul.
Okay, but it's actually Saul of Taurus. All right, now, if you are serious about really wanting to know, you've got to go in and break that word. If you're not willing to do that, then you're not serious. So now, let's say you're going to take this word from Saul to Paul, right? What are you changing? The S and the P, right?
Right.
Okay, well, how many other languages are you going to take that through? And how many different forms is this going to take? In other words, if we're serious about doing this, we have to want to do the work. Saul is actually Saul, and none of the people in the communities that I grew up in, none of them wanted to bother to even think in terms of that was not English. And it doesn't have to be pronounced as English. Not one person, when I was growing up, not one person bothered to look at the Hebrew alphabet and say anything other than, ooh, that's evil. Everybody, preachers, teachers, everybody, they said that was evil. They said that was those were the symbols in the circle that Jesus was placed in when he was actually in the circle and he was going to protect himself from who?
Satan or the devil?
From Satan or the devil. Give me the other one. Come on, give me the other one.
Beelzebub.
Well, now it's Beelzebub, but the average person when I was growing up never heard of Beelzebub. That's something that you've studied since you've gotten older.
I didn't hear the word Beelzebub.
The only
Went off to college.
The only three words that y'all ever heard were the devil, Lucifer,
And Satan.
and Satan. That's it. But you've never bothered to go through those words step by step to find out where they come from. So what makes you think you know anything or you knew anything about what it is that you were talking about?
Was Beelzebub a character in Lord of the Flies?
You didn't have to, because all you had to do was believe.
I'm not sure, but I think you may have been a character in Beetlejuice. I don't know.
Beatrice.
What? What'd you say?
No, be the Jew Beatrice.
Only thing that I'm trying to get to seriously is how we've got to make sure that these children go into the future prepared. They've got to know how to break these things apart, how to do this work.
Before we move on, I looked up Beelzebub, not in Wikipedia, though I'm not down in Wikipedia. But I'm getting to Baal, B-A-A-L-Zebub.
So now you have to figure out where Baal comes out of.
Yeah, that's my next. I'll do it when I get home. But I found out why Carol said the Lord of the Flies.
Right, and there's an area not far from what you call Egypt. As you go into that area and you understand the mythologies of the area, you're going to find Baal.
Ball.
All right?
Ball.
But that's the calf. The golden calf.
It will become the golden calf in the stories based on you've got to go through all the stories. And for you, see, you were never a Negro Christian, were you? Okay. But for most of you, you were Negro Christians. And so, you know, most Negro Christians get where they get their Bible from.
The movie,
No.
Which movie?
Ten
Ten
Commandments.
Commandments.
Ten Commandments. That's where they get their
And that's
Bible
where
from.
Baal was in the Ten Commandments.
Right. But in the Ten Commandments, I think they're going to change Baal around, and so that he appears when they're having the party, when Moses is coming back down the hill.
When he comes down, they have built, they got impatient.
They built
And they built the
a
golden
calf.
calf in the image of,
Well, the calf is actually, the golden calf, which is a cow, is actually the ox. It's actually the ox. And you have to go through the story and break the story apart so that you understand how you've misunderstood these stories for so long. It's just like this character here, Saul, or what you call Saul. We don't understand this character because we've not gone step by step back through the story in order to figure this out. So one thing that I'm trying to get all of the children to do with this chart, Kennedy, how many letters have you been connecting with this chart? And tell me how you've been doing it. Yes.
you get back to the Protestant. Oh, Al
Yes.
gone.
No problem. Don't worry about that. Go ahead.
Well, two things. He's gone. I'll talk to him about Lord of the Flies and Beelzebub. But in the meantime, the Protestant. Where I thought where you were going is Martin Luther and his
Kennedy,
associate.
are you listening to what she's saying? Well, then you better do something so that you can hear her. Go ahead.
Where I thought you were going, when you had James to look up Martin Luther, and he said he was one of the, I don't think he used the word principles, but
He used the word reformer.
the reformer, but he said he was one of the it meant major player in the Protestant movement. So
He was the creator of the Protestant movement. He is the person that created the Protestant movement.
And what is a Protestant?
Did you look it up, James? Why not? You mean to tell me we're actually using a word in front of y'all that you don't have a clue about and you've not looked it up? I'm looking at you. You raised your hand. What?
Protestant meant an upset Catholic.
Yes, but do not take my word for anything.
Baby, you can't go around.
She said you can't go around saying that.
What?
Because if you say that around Negroes, they're going to lynch you, child.
Now, while they are looking up Protestant, I was listening to a broadcast a couple of days ago about the Calvinists.
John Calvin.
Okay, and so what the broadcast was actually saying, and they put it into a contemporary context
There are Calvinists right now.
about the Calvinists
Yes.
and Harvard University,
That's right.
and it being a Calvinist institution.
Yes.
So I guess what I wanted to point out is that we make light of these expressions, the Protestants and the Lutherans and the Calvinists and what have you, but literally those different religions are still running major institutions in this country
Who
today.
controls the FBI west of the Rocky Mountains and north of Arizona? Who controls the FBI? West of the Rocky Mountains and north of Arizona. Who controls the CIA?
The Mormons?
The Mormons. Who controls the CIA? In most of the areas of the United States, what group controls the CIA?
Is the Methodist?
Her name is Mary Baker, Eddie, Mary Eddie Baker, whichever. Who was she? Who? Who was she? Zaire, who was she?
Mary Eddie, Mary Baker Eddie,
Mary Eddie Baker, Mary Baker Eddie, whichever it is. Who was she?
I don't know.
Come on, I know y'all got telephones. You always hide and look it up on your telephone.
But the
Christian,
point is,
she was the founder of the Christian Scientist.
okay.
She was the founder. So you just go in and look up who was the founder of Christian Scientist.
But I think I'm trying to evolve this thought and say that what we're actually seeing on the part of all of these people that Trump has nominated for his cabinet members, it's interesting to go in and do an investigation of whatever their religious background is. But all of them it's making a statement that they want to hang on to those religions and those principles or whatever that have been holding things in place in this country for a very, very, very long time. They were saying, in that broadcast that I heard, they were basically saying, and the Calvinists, who was really, it was like in the 1700s, the Calvinists at Harvard University were not going to have whatever it was that was trying to be imposed upon them. But they're still holding fast to this day in whatever it is, whatever position they take or whatever stance they take. And then we just
But in
go
this
through
country,
life.
the main religious institution that controls most of the government agencies is what body?
The Presbyterian, no, not the Presbyterian, the Methodists.
They were all on TV. You were looking at Trump sitting in the church.
The Baptists?
No, they weren't Baptists. There was a Baptist minister there, and there was also a Sikh there, and there was a rabbi there. But what was the church that they were sitting in?
The Catholic Church.
No, they were not.
The National Cathedral.
The National Cathedral from the United States of America is Episcopalian.
Hey, we forgot about them boys.
I haven't forgotten about it. They are Episcopalians because the Episcopalian is the national religion of the United States of America.
Okay, and the other thing that's in the headlines in the news today is Pope Francis has asked the head of one of the major orders in the Catholic Church to step down. He's asked for his resignation.
Which order?
I don't know. It's one of them.
Well, what are the orders in the Catholic Church?
All I know is the Jesuits.
You have the Jesuits.
But it wasn't one that you hear often.
You have Franciscans.
They weren't Franciscans.
You have Dominicans. But wait a minute now, we're just talking, and I'm looking around, and no one is really aware of what we're talking about. But yet they know all about religion.
But I think it's important in this class, based on the question that he raised about Martin Luther, that you understand all of
Well,
these.
so far, all these folks in this room, nobody has bothered to even think about what I asked, the question that I asked. This is weird.
Why he changed his name?
Yeah, why did he change his name? What?
I mean,
He went to Germany, and he was involved in a theology class, and he actually learned about Martin Luther. And when he came back to Atlanta, he decided to change his name and his son's name to Martin Luther. And they became Martin Luther King and Martin Luther King Jr. But why would he change their names?
He became impressed with some principles of the.
What was the principle that he was so impressed with?
Nonviolence.
That Martin Luther was a protester.
That Martin Luther, in order to protest, taught himself etymology. Martin Luther, in order to protest, taught himself etymology. Because what he had to do was he had to translate the Bible from Latin to German. In order to do that, he had to truly understand both languages. In order to understand a language, you have to know etymology. If we are not learning etymology, then we are playing with this. And we like to play with this.
Came up with a thesis.
What was the thesis called?
Was it 93 thesis?
It was called the Deed of Worms.
Deed of Worms. Placed it on the door.
Pasted it up, nailed it to the door of the church.
Yeah.
That's right. So where did you get this from?
That's when you told us to go do the research.
So you mean to tell me that I've actually asked everyone to do this?
Mm-hmm.
How come you were the only one to do it?
Started out
I
so
wasn't, I didn't.
You what?
I didn't hear.
So Martin Luther breaking away from this is actually the first major breakaway from the Catholic Church.
No, he wasn't the first.
Okay.
What he did at the time that he did this made such a difference, a change. It caused this change to take place in other kingdoms in such a way that it caught on. And then other groups chose to break away from the Holy Roman Empire or the Catholic Church. And so each place started developing its own state religion.
So if they weren't all Protestants,
They were all Catholics.
I mean, they were all Catholics, and you had these groups that broke away from them.
Every group that broke away from the Catholic Church was a Protestant.
Oh, every group was a Protestant.
Every group. So, don't you find it strange that all of your life you've been calling yourself a Baptist, but you didn't know that a Baptist was a Protestant? Don't you find that strange?
protest.
You were a protester. What were you protesting? The Catholic Church. The abuses of the Catholic Church.
But
That's
all
what
of them-
Martin Luther was protesting.
But you made a statement the other day about the
Episcopalian, the way the
no
Episcopalian,
different.
the way the Episcopalian religion comes into existence. There was never a religion called Episcopalian on the planet. On the planet, regarding when New England was formed, they were subjects to Great Britain and the King of England, the United Kingdom. In New England, in other words, all the colonies were subjects of these people, but their state religion was called, by this time, the Church of England. They were Anglicans. And that's what the Church of England is. And so when they revolted and succeeded in actually getting the boot of oppression off of their necks, one of the first things they did was they said, we will no longer be subjects to the Church of England. We will not be subjects to the crown, but we will not be subjects to the Church of England. And so one of the first things that they did as what they call themselves Americans was they created an American version of the Church of England. And they called it what?
Episcopalian.
Episcopalian. And then later, there was a small group of enslaved people
They are
who all of a sudden said, if you are not willing to actually share an understanding of the concept of God with us equally in a way that we can do this as social equals, then what we'll do is we'll form our own group. And they became what?
AME?
Who?
AME?
African Methodist Episcopal Church, founded by
Richard Allen.
Richard Allen and
Absalom Jones.
Absalom Jones. What we have to do is we have to go in and we have to find out step by step what has happened. The AME Church quickly dissolved and broke away from each other. So what was the first group that when they broke up, and they separated, what group formed from the AME? CME, and who were the CME?
Colored Methodists.
They were the Colored Methodist Episcopal Church,
They didn't want to be called Africans.
because they didn't want to be called African. Now, in the late 1950s,
Wait,
they lied about the history.
AME Zion came in.
They also broke away
from the
and
AME.
became Zionists, AME Zionists. But what you really want to understand about them breaking up and becoming CMEs and AMEs and the whole bit, later in the 1950s, when all of a sudden the African craze was going on around the United States, and they didn't like admitting that they formed because they didn't want to be called African. I'm talking about the CME. They changed it to congregation, Christian Methodist Episcopal, and then Congregationist Methodist Episcopal. So in other words, they lied. They do what most black people do all the time. They lied.